Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone is having a good day. Thank you for everyone for coming out today to draw attention to the important issue of stalking and intimate partner violence. Public safety is by far the #1 priority of our administration, and that includes making sure we do everything we can to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. Nationally, about 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men have been stalked in the United States. In Kentucky, we have one of the highest rates of stalking, with 1 in 4 Kentucky women experiencing stalking in their lifetime. This is unacceptable. As long as individuals in our community fear for their safety, they cannot achieve their full potential and our entire community suffers. Stalking is a terrifying crime that causes great distress and harm to its victims. It is also strongly associated with intimate partner homicide. Nearly 85% of cases where an intimate partner, like a boyfriend or husband, attempted to murder his female partner, stalking had occurred in the year prior to the attack. We as a community, as a government, must do everything we can to prevent stalking, including working together to bring best practices and training to law enforcement, victim service providers, and community partners. We need to ensure that we have the best technology to track and document stalking and increase safety for victims. Collaboration is key, and that's amazing to see the representation of that collaboration here today. The Domestic Violence Prevention Coordinated Council is a key partner in this work, bringing together criminal justice, victim services, court, social services, and community members to address domestic violence and related crimes of stalking. I want to thank Faith Augustine and her team, as well as all of the members of the Domestic Violence Prevention and Coordinating Council for the work they do every day to keep our community safe and to combat stalking. I want to recognize a few of the elected officials who are here with us today that are on that council. Mike O'Connell, David Nicholson, Judge Karam. Thank you all so much for what you do with your work towards this effort every day, not just during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm also encouraged today by the work we are doing inside of Metro government to make sure that our 5,000 employees are protected if they experience domestic violence, stalking, or other similar crimes. Today, we are announcing the launch of a new campaign to let all Metro employees know of available resources if they are experiencing domestic violence, stalking, and related crimes. We are implementing training for HR representatives and new policies to ensure that victims of domestic violence, stalking, and other crimes know about their right to paid leave, to report the violence, seek assistance, participate in police interviews and court, or to take other action to prevent the violence. Whether it is in the workplace, in healthcare, in our police departments, in our courts, in our homes, in our relationships, we all have a role to play in preventing stalking and intimate partner violence. There is far too much domestic violence in this community. We have seen the rates increase over the past several years. That is simply unacceptable. And so I'm proud here today to stand with others, to be in this room with others that are working every day to reduce the amount of domestic violence in our community. Supporting those in Metro government is one way that will help, and working together to prevent stalking is critically important. Now it is my honor to call up the Honorable Lori Goodwin, Family Court Judge and co-chair of the Domestic Violence Prevention and Coordinating Council, to give her remarks. Judge Goodwin.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Goodwin. I serve as your Family Court Judge in Family Court Division number 3, as well as the co-chair of the Domestic Violence Prevention Coordinating Council, or DVPCC. As someone who has represented clients during my time as an attorney at the Legal Aid Society, representing clients of domestic violence and stalking, I know the importance of highlighting the issues of domestic violence and stalking. I'd first like to thank Mayor Greenberg for highlighting the issue so early on in his term. As we know, combating domestic violence and stalking requires strong leadership and coordination. At DVPCC, we work to improve interagency cooperation and communication in the area of domestic violence to promote effective prevention, intervention, and treatment techniques which will be developed, which are based on research and data collection. We also work to improve the response to domestic violence and abuse in order to reduce incidences thereof. To accomplish these tasks, the DVPCC is responsible for examining ways in which agencies, departments, and courts in Louisville Metro respond to domestic violence and stalking, and work to improve those responses by making recommendations to the mayor, the Jefferson County Metro government, agencies, departments, courts, etc. The DVPCC is made up of several subcommittees as well, including the Fatality Review Committee, which is the committee that addresses domestic-related homicides and stalking. The DVPCC has been alarmed by the recent spike in domestic-related homicides in our community, and we are doing everything in our power to address those issues and find systemic solutions. The DVPCC members play many roles in preventing stalking and domestic violence. For example, law enforcement screens for stalking and other fatality risk factors when victims report violence. They refer them to victim services for safety planning, advocacy, and emergency shelter. Our intake center at the Domestic Violence Intake Center over at the Hall of Justice provides a space for victims to seek protective orders to prevent stalking and domestic violence. Organizations such as the Legal Aid Society with their domestic violence advocacy program and other pro bono attorneys in our community provide representation to survivors of stalking and domestic violence during their protective order hearings. Judges, such as myself, review petitions for stalking protective orders, as well as presiding over those protective order hearings and criminal cases that involve stalking. We all play an important role in preventing stalking and domestic violence in our community, and DVPCC is making sure that we all work in unison with a sense of urgency. I would like to thank all of my colleagues here from DVPCC, as well as everybody gathered here today in addressing this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Goodwin, for your leadership and for everyone's participation in the DVPCC. We could not do this work without all of your work to support victim service agencies. Now, I'd like to introduce and invite Elizabeth Wessels Martin, Chief Empowerment Officer of the Center for Women and Families, who is accompanied by Kim Moore, to speak next. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, and yes, thank you to the Mayor for making space in your first 26 days of office to talk about this very important topic. And thank you to Gretchen Hunt and the Office for Women. Gretchen has a long history with the Center, and we are always grateful for her partnership. I am the Chief Empowerment Officer at the Center for Women and Families. And the Center for Women and Families is the 9-county service provider to victims and survivors and families for domestic and intimate partner violence and sexual violence. We are in Jefferson County, the 6 surrounding counties, and Clark and Floyd in Indiana. The Center for Women and Families is open 24/7, 365 days a year. We are never, ever closed, and that's important because one of the things that I heard during COVID was that perpetrators often told their victims, the center's closed, nobody's going to respond to you. We never close. We never will. Let's be clear, stalking is targeted violence. It's another form of domestic intimate partner violence. It is not a sign of love or admiration. If a perpetrator is waiting to see somebody and they're unwanted, that is not a sign of anything but power and control. And that's what domestic violence is. It's about trying to gain power and control over somebody else. Stalking, what does it look like? It's made up of unwanted phone calls, sending unwanted emails, and unwanted text repeatedly. We often see this within the center. Sending unsolicited letters, lavish gifts, flowers, leaving unwanted presents for that targeted person. Following, spying, and what we see a lot of is tracking. With cell phones today, it is amazing the tracking that we see. Showing up at places without a reason, especially work. That's one of the #1 places that we see. Waiting for someone at a specific location, a bus stop, childcare. We had that happen recently. And let's not forget cyberstalking. That's growing rapidly. Cyberstalking on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I can't even list all the different ones. But we see it and we hear about it all the time. As the mayor said, the impact on victims. 56% of stalking victims live in fear every single minute of who's going to come through a door, who's going to show up on their cell phone. 1 in 8 employed stalking victims lose time from work and often lose their job because of result of the victimization. So thank you to the city and Metro government for putting this opportunity in place for their employees. 1 in 7 stalked victims report mental health impacts that include anxiety, insomnia, social anxiety and dysfunction, severe depression, and even suicide. How can I possibly get away? As the mayor said, 86% of female homicide victims have been stalked in the last 12 months prior to their murder. 79% of abused female homicide victims reported being stalked during the same period that they were abused. And 54% of female homicide victims reported stalking to police before they were killed. And let's not forget men. Unfortunately, we don't see the cases of stalking in men as often, but 1 in 17 men. And as the mayor said, both Kentucky and Indiana have higher rates than other states in this country. And I'll leave you with this last difficult statistic. In 2022, we saw 20 domestic violence-related homicide. That is more than 2020 and 2021 combined. To date, we have 1, and I hope it's the only one that we see. So if you know someone who is being stalked, that is a victim of domestic intimate partner or sexual violence, please have them call the center. An advocate is there to answer their call. The first thing that we always do is safety plan, and we'll safety plan over and over and over again because perpetrators don't sit still, and they make it their full-time job to find their victim. So please call 1-800-844-BE-SAFE or 581-7222, and we will answer. Now I have the incredible honor to introduce an amazing woman, Kim Moore, who has been a longtime friend of mine and a friend of the center's.
Hi, everybody. I just want to first thank you, Mayor Greenberg, for having me. And I always like to tell people that when you've been brought out of the darkness, I think it's your duty and responsibility to be a light for others. So as somebody who was a victim of domestic violence, and now I'm a survivor of domestic violence, working in partnership with LMPD and GVI and different things, and I always like to tell people when I get a chance, my daughter works at the Center for Women and Families now. We lived there in 1989. She's a licensed therapist, and we're back doing some work with the agency that truly changed our lives. One of the things I'll tell you about being a domestic violence victim is people pay attention to self-esteem. It's kind of like we got a bullseye on our head, and it says vulnerable. And I always like to tell people, I stayed in that stuff for about 15 years, and it was a different man, but it was the same man. It was just a different face. And until I got around some women and men who really wanted to see me do better, only then my life could change because, I always say Judge Brian Edwards saw the potential before I could ever see it. He was my public defender in 1994, and I didn't want to do anything different with my life. I just didn't want to get beat up. So I'm in my 25th year of sobriety, and I think my substance abuse played in. I always like to tell people, I'm in my 25th year of sobriety, and I think my substance abuse played into my pain. And so every time I decided to get sober, I was getting beat up again, and I had to go get some more dope to Medicaid. And so I stand here today as a direct result of people who believed in me even before I believed in myself. You know, I see Mike O'Connell, and I used to get prosecuted, in Jefferson County Court, and, going back and forth to court. And 30 years ago, Tom Wine was my attorney at my lowest point. And I really believe that when you rise up and you're in a position to do some of the things that I get to do, you come back and you do it, and you change the community the best way you can. I'm a former Metro employee who today is the CEO of a nonprofit in Russell with the seed money from the Keenan Foundation, and I like what I get to do. And when I think about where I come from, if you tell me to write a list of what I wanted out of my life in 1998, I would have sold myself so short. The Commonwealth of Kentucky has been good to me back then and now. I believe in accountability for your behavior, and today I stand hand in hand with LMPD and the Commonwealth of Kentucky to prosecute people who cause violence. You want to see my blood pressure go up? I do something my son thinks I shouldn't do, and he's 39, and if I see a girl getting beat up on the street, I park my car and I get out, and I'm involved. And I call 911. And I just think so many people in this community, I'll say it's and I'll close, is we've turned a blind eye to the things that don't affect us. And until it's in your backyard, you will not do anything about it. And we watch and we say, oh, those poor people. And we never do anything about it because it hasn't hit us yet. When it hits your household, you want these same people to do the same thing for you that he did for me. So I'm really grateful for my life today, grateful for the things that I get to do. And I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't have Jimmy Harper locking me up in the 90s, giving me pep talks on my way to jail, telling me that if I got sober, I could do some really good stuff with my life. So I believe in people today because people believed in me, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunities that I get. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Kim. What a powerful story. And Kim is doing so much in our community beyond just working on this issue, but also being a partner with LMPD, with other community partners in our GVI, Group Violence Intervention initiatives to help prevent violent crimes from taking place in the first place. Our administration is devoted to being a model workplace to prevent stalking, domestic violence, and other crimes. So now it's my honor to invite two colleagues, Director Ernestine Booth Henry of Human Resources and Gretchen Hunt, Executive Administrator of the Office for Women, to speak. Gretchen, Ernestine.
Thank you. As Mayor Greenberg mentioned, my name is Ernestine Booth Henry. I'm the Director of Human Resources. So what does it mean to be a victim? Does victimization stop when the justice system acts? They right the wrong, they enforce the retribution. But for a long time, as an employer, that is how we treated victims of crime, just as parts of the judicial landscape. But to be a victim is much more than just being a name during that prosecution. That victimization oftentimes continues long after the judge's gavel has fallen. Louisville Metro government is constantly redefining the ways we can help our employees work and live their fullest, healthiest lives so they can best serve the residents of our community. I am pleased to say that the domestic abuse criminal victimization leave addresses the growing understanding of what it means to be a victim of a crime and domestic violence. This policy allows us to take or give the employee the opportunity to have time to attend to their health and welfare during the aftermath of a crime. It addresses both the physical and psychological damage that oftentimes follows that victim in the wake of violence perpetrated against them. And it provides paid time off to help them restore their sense of agency by taking an active role in the prosecution of their assailant and/or abuser. I want to thank Mayor Greenberg, Metro Council, the Office of Equity, and the Office for Women for their partnership and taking the lead in developing this new policy, for working with us in drafting, initiating, and communicating this policy to our employees. Louisville Metro government knows that the best service that our employees can give to our public is when they are able to take care of themselves and take care of their health and well-being. And with the new domestic abuse and criminal victimization leave, this will allow our employees to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Booth Henry, and thank you to all my colleagues. I'm Gretchen Hunt, as the mayor said, with the Office for Women, and I want to thank the mayor again, as other folks have said, for prioritizing this issue during a very, very busy time, and it shows the dedication of this office to care about the community and to separate that divide between who we are at Metro government and the community. There really is no separation. We are one community. I just briefly want to say what we're going to do for Metro employees. So when we talk about a campaign, we want to make sure that the culture changes so that we reduce the shame and stigma that many survivors experience. Often survivors are afraid to come forward and talk about what's going on. And make no mistake, there are survivors in this room, there are survivors in every room. I have trained law enforcement, judges, police officers, and there's survivors in every profession, in every area. There are people who carry that inside of them and they just don't feel like they can share it. That often is really the case also for the helpers. So for all the people in Metro government who help the community, now this is the assistance for them. We know that this works. So this helps workplaces. It's not just a victim-centered policy. It reduces domestic violence and other crimes, and it sends a clear message to batterers that this is not acceptable behavior, that the person we are centering in this conversation is the survivor. So here at Metro, as Director Booth has talked about, we have taken the ordinance that we are so grateful to Metro Council for adopting, and now we are implementing that in policy, in training. We have created resources that will be all over Metro government to help spread this message. We will layer that. Each Metro employee will have cards. We will have this in place because we want to empower our colleagues here at Metro government to look out for one another. Mayor Greenberg, in his early days has talked about the value of hospitality, not just the value of hospitality out to the community, but how we treat one another, that we are each other's keeper. And so this is really empowering employees also to look out for one another, to not be afraid to say, I'm concerned about your safety. You're not alone. Do you know there's help available? So we'll have these cards available because sometimes people feel very afraid. I don't know what to do, right? But this is a simple act that people can do. And this is also a very clear call to action, as Mayor Greenberg talked about, that we want to be a model workplace. What we would love to see, and the Office for Women is happy to collaborate with any partners out in the field, corporations, nonprofits, other folks who will adopt these similar campaigns to protect their employees. We know that we spend more time at work than any other place, so this is probably the best place to reach victims and survivors of domestic violence. I worked, as Elizabeth talked about, in my early days as a lawyer at the Center for Women and Families, and victim service programs and courts and police see only the tip of the iceberg. So if we are doing this effort in workplaces, we're going to capture a lot more people. So it's a call to action to the community. And again, I want to thank everybody who has made this possible, DVPCC and Mayor Greenberg.
Thank you so much, Gretchen and Ernestine. I want to close just on a personal note. My first exposure to learning about domestic violence happened over 30 years ago when the Office for Women was first created, the then Jefferson County Office for Women, led by the first director, Marcia Roth. And I was her first intern when that office first started as a teenager. And I was fortunate in my upbringing that I had not been exposed to domestic violence in our household. And if I had seen it, I was unaware it was going on around me. But during that summer that I worked for Marcia in the Jefferson County Office for Women, I started to hear about and read about stories of domestic violence and the impact it had not just on the intended targeted victim, but on family, on neighbors, on entire neighborhoods. Domestic violence has been around for all of time. We as a community need to be doing everything we can to stop it. And so I'm proud to be here today with all of you who have been working so hard to end domestic violence in our community. And so now I'd like to invite all of the members from DVPCC who are here with us today, Mike, David, everyone else, please come up here as we present a proclamation for Stalking Awareness Month. But I want to end on this, while folks are coming up. While this is just one recognized month, as we were just talking about and you heard from so many people, this needs to be something that we all as a community focus on every day to protect individuals from being harmed by domestic violence, to protect their kids, and to prevent it from leading to even worse crimes that we've heard about is happening far too much in our community. So on behalf of all of Metro government, we now declare Stalking Awareness Month as we continue to make known a crime that affects 1 in 4 women in Kentucky, the highest rate in the nation. 3 in 4 women killed by an intimate partner have been stalked by that intimate partner. The need is growing for public awareness about the nature, criminality, and potential lethality of stalking. Criminal justice systems can enhance their responses to stalking by regular training and assertive investigation and prosecution of the crime. Laws and public policies must be continually adopted to keep pace with new tactics used by stalkers. Communities can better combat stalking by adopting multidisciplinary responses by teams of local agencies and organizations and by providing more and better victim services. The City of Louisville applauds the efforts of the many victim service providers, police officers, prosecutors, national and community organizations, and private sector supporters for their efforts in promoting awareness about stalking. To all of you up here with me today, thank you for everything you do. To everyone in the community, thank you all as well. Kim, we will present this proclamation to you, but please know it's on behalf of all of us and the entire Louisville Metro government. Thank you all so much.